toast dry with butter, but if you want to, just say your toast, me and Brenda, we'd toast with a water glass, but the rest, we just weren't going to do it. Well, does it really matter? No, it matters to us. You say, well, are you patting yourself on the back? Absolutely. You might say, well, I drink a toast. Okay, that's fine. I'm not criticizing. All I'm saying is this. Those first 9 verses are going to tell you this. They liked Daniel. They did. Everybody liked Daniel until the king said, hey, you know what? I'm going to put him over y'all too. Oh, well, that's not fair, right? That's not fair. So they said, you know what? We got to get him. And when the world wants to get him, they're going to put him in a situation, you know what, where he's got to do something. Look at verses 10 and 11 there. Look at there. Here is a man, you know the story. I don't have to go over that. The story's been put out. There's a royal decree. Look, and I like this. How long was this decree for? Was it for a year? Was it for 30 weeks? How long was it for? Huh? No. The decree that they got the king to sign, what was it? They went to the king and they said, King, oh king, live forever. Hey, you need to make this decree to make sure everybody knows you're the king. And what is it? How long? 30 days. 30 days ain't that long. Let's start working out our faith. Hey, Terry, they said the president put out, he didn't want anybody praying the month of November. Well, I'm praying. Yeah, well, Terry, look, you could pray and no one would know. I mean, God would know. Or you could pretend you weren't praying and pray in your heart, and then you'd still, we could go back and forth. Well, Terry, you do a lot of good. I mean, if you get yourself in trouble and lose everything, what good are you going to be to God then, right? After all, it's only 30 days. Does that sound familiar? No. Y'all are all strong in your faith. You would never consider that. You know what? That Daniel didn't consider it. Look at verse 10 and 11 there of chapter 6. Now, when Daniel knew, he knew it was signed. There was no confusion. You know what he did? What did he do? He did what he always did. He did what he always did. Look at these points right here. Just from verse 10 and 11. Okay? Do you want a better prayer life? Our ladies just had a great prayer, not study, meeting, gathering, prayer retreat. Okay? We've talked about prayer. Pastor Greg that was here talked about prayer. Look, in verses 10 and 11, here's how to have a Daniel prayer life. You ready? Have a specific place to pray. I know some of you do. I'd be willing to say most of us don't. A place that you pray. Why is that important? Sacred, intimate, that's true. Give me another reason. If you got a particular place that you're going to pray regular, then you know you got to go to that place and you're going to do what? You're going to pray. It's going to make a difference. That's number one. Number two from Daniel, you know what? A specific purpose to pray. Look at Daniel in verse 10 and 11, right? And he prayed. You know what he did? He gave thanks before God. That's what he did. He had a particular place. He had a particular purpose. And then you know what? How many times did he pray a day? You thought that was the Muslim faith. Like most of their pieces, they copied from Jewish history. Absolutely. Listen, Daniel prayed 3 times a day. You go, man, that's a lot of praying. I guess so. You know what? He had a place, he had a purpose, and he had a plan. I don't know what your plan may be. Maybe it's first thing. Maybe it's last thing. Maybe it's middle thing. Do whatever you want. I just want to say this. If you want your prayer to be like Daniel, consider a place, a purpose, and a plan. Finally, look at what he did. Look at verse 10 and 11, right? And he kneeled upon his knees. Daniel had a plan, a place, a purpose, a plan, and a posture. And a posture. Does posture matter? Absolutely. Absolutely. How many of you remember in church when, they had, I used to call them the king chairs. This is where the pastor and the music director would sit. Remember that? And a lady would come up to sing or read, or a lady would come up to do something. What did the men always do? Stand up. Why? Because posture matters. Posture matters. Can you pray on the toilet? Absolutely. Is that the best posture for you only to be praying from? I'm not so sure. Can you pray with a steering wheel in your hand? Drive to Meridian, you'll learn. Drive in Jackson, you'll learn, right? Amen? Amen, Austin? Yeah, right. But you know what? Should that be your only place? I'm just saying posture, place, plan, purpose, all that stuff matters. Oh yeah, it sure does. All that stuff matters. It really does. So listen, the king puts out the decree, and guess what? Daniel prays anyway. You know, think about this. I wrote this down for you. I wrote it down somewhere. Tell me if you agree. A lot of crimes are not sins. And some sins are not crimes. I see the smoke. That's right. Terry, you got the fog machine on? No, they're thinking down here. They spray. See it coming on. I read that twice. I went, what? Listen, did Daniel commit a crime? Yes. He did what? He prayed to somebody other than Darius. All right? Was it a sin? No, it sure wasn't. It sure wasn't. I believe we're going to see this coming. I believe it's almost here. I know you think my time frame is off. I think yours is off. I really do. I tell my wife, we are on such an edge where things could just so drastically change. You just got to be ready. You do. I mean, and listen, you know, the king, here's the thing. The king didn't want anything bad to happen to Daniel. He liked Daniel. He loved Daniel. So why didn't he just change his mind? Because temper gets us into trouble. Pride keeps us there. Boom, boom. Right? In a relationship, temper gets us into trouble. Pride keeps us there. I know it's never happened to you, but you've probably known somebody, right, who realized they had done wrong, but they were too proud to go back and say, hey, I shouldn't have said that. I'm telling you, that's the king. The king, look, you know what? I mean, look at verses 16 to 20. Who's going to the lion's den? Who's being thrown in the lion's den? Come on. Daniel. But who's upset? Who's worried? The king. Look, the king, it's all about it. Here's Daniel. He's doomed to the den, and yet verses 16 through 20 are all about the king. The king is hurting himself. I mean, he seems to suffer more. You know what you can find when you look at that? Look at the relationship between Darius and Daniel. Okay? You know that. What about Herod and John the Baptist? Remember that? What about Pilate and Jesus? Remember that? In all three cases, how are they similar? They were convinced that the man before them was innocent, and they wanted to save him. But you know what? Fear of the crowd, fear of motives, and their own pride kept them from making the right decision. Is that something we have to worry about? Are you willing, or are we willing to be right? Are we willing to say, no, we're going to do it this way? Fear of the crowd, fear of motives, and selfish pride. You know what you become? You become a partner in their murder. And the poor king, listen, I just can't get over it. I just can't get over it. You know how, look at verse 16. Here we go. Verse 16, now you know the story. You've heard it all at Vacation Bible School, right? Then the king said, king commanded, all right, bring him. You got to throw him in. We got to do it. No, we don't, king. Yeah, we got to do it, okay? Look, Daniel's in the den and Darius is in distress. Do you notice that? Daniel was thrown in the lion's den, and the lions were supposed to do what to Daniel? Eat him, okay? The lions didn't eat. Who else didn't eat? The Darius, the king, very good. That's right. That's right. And look at our story. Look, all right? Where's it? Verse 19. The king arose very early. How early is very early? He ain't sleeping. Do you ever sleep like that? Y'all don't get the advantage to sleep like that where you roll over and look at your clock and it's almost exactly 47 minutes past the time you looked at it last time. Oh, that's miserable sleep. I don't know how I do that, but I did. But the king, he got up early, and he goes to the den, and guess what? He gets down there, and it kind of reminds us of another tomb. that somebody else went to, crying. But it was a she. Remember her name? Mary. And she got there, and the king, look at your scripture. The king gets there, right? They have to roll the stone away, right? Absolutely. But look, that other stone from Mary was already rolled away. The king's crying. Look there. Daniel, Daniel. Look there at verse 20. With a lamentable voice. Look what he says, too. Daniel, are you all right? Nope, he doesn't say that. What does he say? Is your God who you serve continually able to save you from the lions? Was he able to deliver you? And you know, I've told you before, this is why I'll never be a Daniel. Because if it was me in the lion's den, you know what I would do? I would say, what? Come closer. Loeth, I cannot heareth thee. Cometh closest to me, king. Yeah, I'd be doing that. But Daniel didn't say that. Look what he said. O king, live forever. My God, verse 22, my God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouths. What angel did he send? Everybody wants to know. His angel. Somebody say, yeah, I love that answer. That's exactly right. You know, they want to say, well, was it Gabriel? Was it this? Was it an archangel? No, it was an angel. Was it a pre-incarnate of Christ? Okay, might have been. Was it a theophany? Might have been. I know this. Them mouths were shut. God bless you. These mouths were shut, right? And look what Daniel says. Daniel don't say, I'm okay. Daniel says this, my God sent. My God sent an angel, shut their mouths so they wouldn't hurt me because I was found innocent before him. Not before you, O king, but before him. Also, O king, just remember, I've done no wrong before you. When he said that, don't you see the king wincing? I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have done that, right? But look at verse 23. Now the king was exceedingly glad for him and commanded they should take Daniel up out of the lion's den. So Daniel was taken up, and no injury was found on him because he believed in his God. All right, that sounds familiar to what? Go back in Daniel to where? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It didn't even smell like smoke, right? Absolutely. Maybe they were victims of the first vape machine. I don't know. But anyway, listen, Daniel was not torn. He didn't smell. You ever been around animals for a long time? What do you smell like? Yeah, that animal. That animal. Yeah. You know, I'm not saying good or bad. You know, we all got pets and everything. But if you invite somebody to your house that has no animals and has no animals inside, and you do, just watch your face. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's different. I'm just saying it's there. But look, they bring Daniel, no injury. You know, we said, who was the angel? I don't know. I just know it's a good angel. You say, well, how did all that work? Here's how it worked. How did Daniel not get eaten? Here it is. That's the difference, right, between a lion tamer and a lion creator. That's the difference. When you look at it that way. You say, so what did happen that night with Daniel? You know, we all got our ideas, right? You know what I think happened? I'll tell you what I think happened, because I've studied. I've spent hours and hours. Here's what I think happened. I think Daniel sat down and got his copy of his Old Testament out and spent all night reading between the lines. And just... Why isn't Jay here? That would have been good, Jay. But don't boom. Yeah, okay. Look, I tried. You know, listen. All right, look. So Daniel is delivered, all right? But his enemies are destroyed. Isn't that something? They all got mad. What'd they get mad over? Was Daniel mean to them? Did he take anything from them? No. Did he get a promotion, actually get it? Not really. Right now, it's just it's something we're thinking about. So they tried to have him killed. Look, I love Proverbs 26:27. You know, it's the old Roadrunner proverb I used to tell them in class. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and he who rolls a stone will roll it back on him. That's Wile E. Coyote right there. Guess what? These folks that tried to kill Daniel, they fixing to get it. Oh, look, their sin came out and got them. Look at verse 24. The king gave the command, and they brought those men who had accused Daniel and cast him into the den of the lion. Oh, not just them. Who else? Oh, that makes it bad. That makes it bad. Their wives too. You know what? Even their servants. Maybe that's, you know, as the saying, as long as it's between two consenting adults, maybe that isn't true. Maybe the sin affects more than the sinner. Is it possible? You better believe it. You better believe it. It is. Look what it says. And the lions overpowered him. It broke all their bones in pieces before they even came to the bottom of the den. Why'd they do that? Because they couldn't eat Daniel. I mean, they were going crazy. They were hungry all night long. Now, do you think that really happened? Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think that? Trick question, yeah. Because it's in the Bible, man. Look, we just believe what's written. I read up on lions. Do you know a male lion? A male lion. We call him what? King of the jungle, king of the beasts. That's right. They can grow up to 10 feet in length. They can weigh up to 500 pounds. You believe in them so far? And look, this is a pack of them in there, right? I also read that a grown lion can kill a 150-pound gazelle with one swipe of its claw. You impressed yet? Me too. I also read this, true, that a grown lion can jump over a 3-foot fence with a gazelle in his mouth. Who is building 3-foot lion fences? That's what I want to know. No, my point is this. The lion is ferocious, all right? The lion is ferocious. These same lions that tore apart these families, you know what? They didn't touch Daniel, okay? Now look, don't blame God about the families. This was all on the king. This was man's rules. I'm just telling you this. You know what? How we live matters to those that we love. Did you catch that? How we live matters to those that we love. You better know it. You better know it. Here's the thing. Why do we love Daniel and Lion's Den so much? Why do we love that story? Yeah, and it's cool. Oh, God's got this. Yeah, I wouldn't be afraid. Oh, you want to throw me with some lions? No matter. I've read this story before. I know how it's going to turn out. Yeah, everything's good. Everything's good, right? Yeah. But you know, what about when the lions' mouths aren't closed? What about when we don't seem to win? That's part of the purpose of this short study in Daniel. Here's what we've told each other. It's not what happens to us. It's what? It's what we do after it happens. How we deal with it. How we deal with it. What about when the lions' mouths aren't closed? What do you do after? Do you ever teach again? Do you ever sing again? Do you ever love again? Do you ever live again? Or are you just a shell of your former self? You know, I mentioned in the beginning, so now we'll close with this. You know, Philip Bliss. I told you he wrote that song. Kid's song. Well, now you'll know this. He also wrote Dare to be a Daniel for his Sunday school class, but he also wrote the music, you'll like this, to It Is Well With My Soul. You know Horatio Spafford, you know that story. He wrote the words. He actually wrote the music. Do you know that song? Would you like me to sing it to you? Gary Buffkin shook his head no. Can you believe that? He won't dare to be a Daniel. He said, hey, I ain't worried about lions. I'm worried about your singing voice. Okay. Anyway, listen, I bring that up to say, has that song not blessed millions of people? Don't we love that song? It's one of those songs you can't help but sing, no matter who's singing it, right? But sometimes the lion's jaws aren't closed. In 1876, you know, Philip, he wrote that song for the kids. After Christmas, as a matter of fact, on December 29th in 1879, he and his wife were traveling by train. And the train, it was at night, they encountered a collapsed bridge and plunged into a frozen riverbed in Ohio. Mr. Bliss survived the wreck but was separated from his wife. Finally, he was told that his wife was alive but trapped in the wreckage below. Then a fire broke out in the wreckage. Mr. Bliss went to rescue his wife, and they both died in that train wreck. And when I read stuff like that, I do not understand. I don't understand that. And the only solace I find is when I look at Proverbs chapter 25, verse 2, where it says this: it's the glory of the Lord to conceal a matter, but it's the honor of the kings to search it out. See, and I were trying to search things out that popped in my mind when we were talking about that. Listen, in our lives, dens, look, they can become places of deliverance. But whatever God chooses to do, it is the right thing. It is the right thing to do. You know that song we sing, Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus? Look full on His wonderful face. And then how does it go? And the things of this earth, the things of this world, the lions and the dens and the anxieties we have. I guess it all depends on where we're looking. There was a preacher once, you may have heard of him. His name was Charles Stanley. And he preached at a big church in Atlanta. And he was going through an extremely difficult time. And he said in the middle of that difficult time, an elderly member of his church invited him to her apartment for lunch. And he was busy and, he had a lot of pressure, and the last thing he wanted to do was be lectured by somebody else. He said he almost didn't go, but he finally agreed. So he met her downstairs. She was at a retirement community, kind of like, Beehive or Congregate? Yeah, something like that. They had lunch together. And then she said, well, listen, there's something I want to show you in my apartment. So he went. She took him there. And she had a picture hanging on her living room, a picture of Daniel in the lion's den. And you've seen those. I've seen those. And she said, Pastor Stanley, look at that picture and tell me what you see. Stanley says, I looked at the picture. I saw the lions had their mouths closed. I told her that. Some were lying down and some were standing. I told the little elderly lady that. And then I saw Daniel standing with his hands behind him, looking up at the ray of light coming into the den. He said, Daniel seemed calm. I pointed out all those things to her. Every detail I could think of. And finally she asked me, she said, is there anything else? And he could think of nothing. And he said, this elderly lady, he said, when I was struggling the most, said she put her little bony arm around my shoulder. And she said, preacher, what I want you to see is that Daniel doesn't have his eyes on the lions. He has his eyes on the light. If we want to be brave like Daniel, it's going to depend on what we're looking at. What are you looking at? Brother Gary Buffin, would you close us with a word of prayer, please, sir?
May we be a blessing to those 100 seconds. Yeah, right down there.